Okay, so this isn't the video that I was expecting to come out today, but they released the dev stream recap, so I decided I might as well go over this, since it seems to be a bit of a tradition that I do these. Um, I have the Baltisk playthrough recorded. I haven't edited it yet, but I have it recorded. That's going to come out next Saturday. And then after that is going to be the one for Refinery. Oil Refinery? Like, I can't remember if it's either Oil Refinery or Oil Rush. Not sure which. But I digress. Okay, dev stream. It's been a while since our last major development update, during this week's live stream, we wanted to take the opportunity to talk openly about where Broken Arrow currently stands, what the team has been working on behind the scenes, and what players can expect over the coming months. If you missed the stream, you can watch the full video here. And I did briefly start this just to check and see how long it is. It's not even half an hour. I mean, well, I don't suppose it needs to be long. I was wondering how long it is. Baltic Battalion and PTE. Following the release of the Baltic Battalion DLC, we've been incredibly happy to see the positive reception from the community. Sorry, moves to front. Following the release of the Baltic Battalion DLC, we've been incredibly happy to see the positive reception from the community. Which is kind of funny, because I've seen some people in the Discord complaining about the Baltic Battalion, saying it sucks. Granted, I haven't used the Baltic Battalion yet, but, well, I haven't used the Baltic Battalion outside of Katika, the Katika scenario, which is kind of supposed to show them off. But I don't think it sucks. I mean, I think it could use a little bit of work. It's basically just a westernized version of mech. And if I'm going to be entirely honest, I do think that the vehicle tab could use about 250 more points. And I would like to point out that both the air and the helicopter tabs are abysmal. And honestly, though, to be fair, they're the air and the helicopter tabs, and both of those only have two options each that are either A, pretty mediocre, or B, pretty situational. So they're both 250 point tabs each, so they're gonna be very secondary. Heck, they're gonna be tertiary at best. But actually, honestly, thinking about Baltic Battalion, I think it might have too many infantry points. Yeah, you've got 1750, and that is a whole lot. I mean, that's the same as mech. But bringing it down to 1500 and adding adding 250 points to vehicle might not be a bad idea. Then again, that just might be my bias towards vehicles, seeing as I just like using vehicles more than I do using infantry. Yes, I'm the kind of person who will make a deck with the armor brigade fully loaded with Bradleys, and then only use the Bradleys and not use the infantry for the Bradleys. But I digress. While the DLC was designed as a smaller scale content release, from our perspective, the impact it had on the game and community activity, I assume that's activity, exceeded our expectations. The new hybrid deck building options, strong infantry focused gameplay, and fresh tactical combinations brought a lot of players back into the game and gave us valuable insights on how players want to expand their armies in the future. At the same time, the PTE branch has become an important part of development. It allows us to experiment with gameplay changes, rebalance systems, and new features while gathering direct feedback from the community before deploying them to the live version of the game. Right now, roughly 1/3 of the active players are using the PTE regularly, which gives us a strong testing ground for future updates while still keeping the main branch stable for the wider player base. Honestly, 1/3 is probably a really good number for that, because it gives you enough people that you can actually get meaningful test data from, while also allowing enough people to play the actual game for the actual game to remain viable. Incoming gameplay patch. Our next major step is the incoming gameplay patch, which is currently planned for release within the next few weeks. This patch will bring a number of features and balance changes currently being tested on the PTE into the main game, including various unit reworks, gameplay adjustments, and configuration updates. If I'm going to be entirely honest, that statement does not make me feel good. It actually kind of, I don't want to say scares, because it'd be a bit ridiculous to be scared about it, but honestly, there are things I like about the PTE. I already said as much when I did the Baltisk video. There are things I like about the PTE. There are things I don't like about the PTE. There are things that I think would be really good for the game. Then there are things that I think would be really bad for the game. Now, I don't know what kind of unit reworks, gameplay adjustments, and configuration updates they're talking about here, but I'm not really sure if it's the ones that I think should make it to live. I mean, obviously, I'm not sure if it's the ones I think should make it to live. I'm not sure which ones it is, but I'm genuinely concerned that it might be the wrong ones. Anyway, we only move features from the PTE to the live game once we are confident they are stable and ready. Our approach is intentionally careful in the goal of improving the overall gameplay experience without disrupting campaign scenarios, single-player content, or the core experience players already enjoy. That makes me feel slightly better. But I still wish they would get a little bit more specific about what changes they're going to bring to the PTE. I suspect the artillery rework is going to happen in some form or another, even if I personally don't care for it all that much. I mean, I like what they've done with it, but I kind of wish they would just bring artillery availability up to 3 or multiples of 3, mainly because, if I'm not mistaken, the number of guns in a traditional battery is 3. Like, you generally have 3 guns in your smallest in your smallest, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Kind of like how there's a certain number of squads within a platoon, a certain number of platoons within a company, a certain number of companies within a brigade. Your smallest unit of artillery is, if I'm not mistaken, a battery consisting of about 3 guns, at least in the U.S. Again, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not an artilleryman, and honestly, I haven't done all that much studying, but I certainly wouldn't mind having a 3-gun artillery battery. And I know from some Googling I did several weeks ago, because I was curious, that your average Soviet, and by extension Russian, battery consists of about 3 to 6 guns. It also consists of about 3 or 6 MRLs, but I have a nagging suspicion giving a single player 6 Smerches is probably going to be a little bit too much. Although, to be fair, I'm pretty sure you can make the same argument about giving a player 6 M270s. Not every experimental PTE feature will immediately move to the live branch, which kind of opens the door for them all moving to the live branch eventually. And the PTE will continue to serve as our long-term testing environment for future mechanics, balance iterations, and new systems. So I wonder how they're going to do that. Is it going to be a sort of like relatively live and fluid thing where just where stuff just starts, like, they just gradually add stuff and change stuff? Or is it going to be a sort of thing where it works in iterations, where they're testing one iteration, and then when they test another one, they just completely purge it and make and then adjust what they need to make the second iteration? I assume it's the latter, because if it's the latter, you're going to get more pure, for lack of a better term, test data than if it was the former. Because you don't have a bunch of other different factors that's muddying your test data. Like, for example, if you wanted to test how effective, say, increasing the ECM on helicopters are in the PTE, if you want to test and see whether or not reworking helicopters, ECM, and flares would be good, you can test that in the PTE, but the results you get are going to be different because the number of well, actually, no, I don't think the number of MANPADS infantry is reduced to the PTE. But anyway, you should get my point. Alternatively, take the scenario I was talking about, the helicopters, and just make it for armored vehicles. Say you want to test, you want to change how armor works with, like for example, how heat armor works. If you want to make it something closer to the way kinetic armor works, because with the way kinetic armor works, if the armor of, like, if you have a vehicle that has X amount of kinetic protection, and you point a gun at it that fires a shell that does kinetic damage, but with penetration at or less, or rather less than the kinetic armor of the vehicle you're pointing it at, you're not going to do any damage at all. And it has to be a certain amount of but if the penetration is more than the kinetic armor of the vehicle in question, then you're going to do damage up to, I think, double the vehicle's kinetic armor, at which point you're going to be doing full damage. Maybe they want to take heat. They want to take heat damage and change it that way. Well, with the reduced number of ATGM teams, you're not going to get a clean result compared to the live server. The goal is to improve overall gameplay quality while maintaining stability for campaign scenarios and single-player content. Spectator mode is almost there. I've seen a lot of people complaining about spectator mode, and I understand it, and I understand why a lot of people want it, particularly for hunting cheaters. I don't know. It's not something I'm super interested in, so I've never really understood why people are so fervent about it. I mean, I understand why they want it, but I don't understand why it's too big of a deal. One of the most requested features since launch has been spectator mode, and we are happy to confirm the development is near completion. The first version of spectator mode will focus on core functionality: team-specific observers, neutral observers, switching between teams' perspectives, and basic tournament spectating support. A second phase is already planned for later updates and will introduce more advanced tournament. I'm sorry, tournament sounds like a type of. Terminate sounds like a type of gaunt species like Hormigaunt and Termagant. I'm probably thinking of Termagant. Tournament. Oriented functionality, including visibility into players' decks, economy information, and expanded esports style tools, because apparently they want to go in the esports direction. That said, I think this game could be I've never been interested in esports much. I know that games like World of Warships has a pretty strong community-driven esports following, but I don't care for like League of Legends or a lot of those games like that. So I don't. I mean, I don't care for League of Legends or what is it, DOTA? I think. I have no idea what DOTA stands for, but I think that's the other one alongside League of Legends. Nor the sort of online tournaments that form around them. But if they want to take it to tournaments, I guess it could work. Because, well, I mean, it'd be kind of different at the very least. But anyway, I digress. The recent community tournament. The recent community tournament demonstrated just how much potential Broken Arrow has as a competitive RTS experience, and spectator mode is a major step towards supporting large official events in the future. Technical patch and quality of life improvements after the gameplay I'm sorry, it's like 4 something in the morning. After the gameplay patch, the team will start focus towards a more technical update aimed at improving multiplayer stability, networking, and overall user experience. We know many players have experienced frustrations related to multiplayer connectivity and netcode, and improving these systems is currently a major priority for the team. This technical patch will also introduce a large set of quality of life improvements that have been developed over the past several months. Planned improvements currently include chat access during deployment phase, improved unit statistics panels, which I would like to see, UI improvements, order feedback improvements, line of sight tools, offline skirmish lobbies, and additional multiplayer usability updates. Honestly, the one there I mean, I don't play multiplayer, so the technical patch isn't going to be too interesting to me, but I do think that the statistics panel, UI improvements, order feedback, and the line of sight tool could be useful, seeing as that doesn't just pertain to multiplayer. Some of these systems are already deep into polishing, while others are still actively in development. And they have updated the roadmap and they've updated the roadmap to what's the word I'm looking for? To better display their progress. Like, if you look at the roadmap here and then you go back to the roadmap back in last November, there's going to be a lot of things that are now in the released content stage. The next DLC, and this is on this right here is the reason why I actually decided to make this video. Work is also progressing on the next major DLC focused on Russia. Unlike the Baltic Battalion, this will be a significantly larger content release featuring new units, new maps, additional single-player content, and a brand new campaign. So, like, look, if I'm going to be entirely honest, I just thought the DLCs were going to be a lot like the Baltic Battalion one, which is just like, oh, okay, here's a new specialization with a bunch of new units. Maybe we'll get a scenario showing them off. Apparently, they're coming with a new campaign. The campaign itself will be shorter than the main release campaign, but it will take place in entirely new locations that the team is especially excited about. I'm honestly wondering how many of these are going to be focused more towards the east. Because remember, 2027, new nation with a new campaign, a new biome and war theater, and lots of new maps. Yeah, I'm gonna go out on a limb here, as I said before. I think the new faction might be something starting with a C and ending with an Ina. So, and if they want, and this is gonna be really funny if that's what they do, they're gonna turn it into something like Battlefield 4. In Battlefield 4's multiplayer, where you also had the U.S., Russia, and China, but neither side was, but like Russia and China weren't on the same side. So in the multiplayer, at least, you could end up having Russia and China fight each other. And I wonder if that's what they're gonna do here. So if the campaign for China is literally just gonna be like a three-way brawl. I mean, it could be a three-way brawl. It'd be kind of funny. Otherwise, what you're probably gonna have, particularly if the campaign is going to involve a conflict in the Indo-Pacific, which, let's be honest, is probably likely if we're talking about a conflict involving China, then that doesn't really leave much room for Russia, unless Russia literally decides to team up with China. But unless we're talking about Russia and the US and China fighting each other three-way war style, I guess it could be interesting. Or alternatively, it could be just like the US fighting China, Russia fighting China, and China fighting both the US and Russia at once. So it's again sort of three-way war style, except the US and Russia aren't actively shooting at each other. And then we have a bunch of screenshots for new vehicles, and a lot of these are appear to be based off of the Tiger chassis. The Tiger is basically a Russian MRAP. It's kind of like, well, I say Tiger, T-I-G-R, not your typical spelling, but it's kind of something like the Cougar series, or although it might actually be more comparable to the JLTV. If I'm not mistaken, the Typhoon from the VDV specialization is either, well, that's an MRAP, much like the Tiger is. I don't think it's a member of the Tiger family, but it's similar to the Tiger itself. So maybe not necessarily a Cougar counterpart, but something much more like a JLTV counterpart. And then we have this thing, which I'm assuming is a recon vehicle. And I say that because this right here looks like a massive, well, it's got what appears to be cameras and a radar. And yes, the Russians did use radars as a ground reconnaissance tool. This is why if you look at a lot of, in fact, of the Russian recon vehicles, they have radars, because that's just what Russia uses. Now, as to whether or not this is going to be something like this, or something more like, this, I don't know. And by what I mean by that is whether or not it's going to be a troop transport or a reconnaissance vehicle, I don't know. I would assume, well, I mean, it's an MRAP, so I'm going to assume it's a troop transport of some kind. Even if the sensor mast here kind of implies that it should have good vision. This just appears to be your typical 30mm autocannon in ARWS. And then we have a version with ATGMs. So it appears to be the same basic armament as on the Cornet D1 that that VDV gets. So I'm expecting it's going to play a lot like that. It's just A, not going to be as tough, and B, it's going to be faster on road. And then this thing, which is basically just a tiger, but with a bunch of iglas, from the looks of it, because man pads. Also, it kind of looks like we're gonna have an up armor package for these, so it might actually be kind of as tough, because it literally looks like they've just It looks like they have welded new armor onto the vehicle, Mad Max style. I could probably make a joke about improvised vehicle armor in Ukraine, but I'm not going to. And again, I can't tell if that's supposed to be a rubber side skirt or is literally just a sheet of metal that they bolted over the back set of tires. This thing kind of reminds me of the some of the larger vehicles in the Typhoon family, because there's a series of vehicles from the there's a series of Russian 6x6 and 8x8 MRAPs that are part of the Typhoon family. I'm not sure if this one is specifically. I don't think so. I could be wrong, but that's what it reminds me of. And we have one that appears to just have a sort of 23mm autocannon, or you can stick a ZSU-23-2 on it, because the Russians stick ZU-23-2s, because the Russians stick ZU-23-2s on literally anything that has a flat enough, or that has a surface large or flat enough to take one. On the upside, it doesn't appear to have the man pads. As the side, I kind of think it would be better, for lack of a better term, if the ZU-23-2s that you can stick on transport vehicles, Russia vehicles. So I'm talking about the option here, and I believe there was one in mech. Was there one in mech? Or is it in support? No, there wasn't. Well, what I'm getting at is, if you could take the ZU-23-2 upgrades, but you didn't have an option of taking the one with the iglas, except on dedicated anti-aircraft vehicles. So, like this thing. That's what I was trying to get at. This thing, or I thought there was an equivalent in the support tab for mech, but I guess I was wrong. However, there isn't as many as I thought there were. Again, I thought there was an equivalent in mech. So, and I was going to exclude the vehicles that were specifically used for the ManPads units, which consists of this and this. The problem is that if you give a pass for these, because they go to the guys with the ManPads, this is literally the only example. So, I suppose it's not that big of a deal. I just mean that because, number one, it's a bit of a cost-saving measure, at least from my perspective, if I'm building a deck out of it. And number two, it helps rein in the amount of air defense a player has, since they seem to be wanting to rein in air defense a bit. Anyway, I digress. We get a T-72, a T-72A specifically, and this is... I mean, T-72As are not exactly ancient, but they are old. Okay, like... we get the cheapest tank Russia has is the T-72B. This thing. Like, this is the cheapest thing they've got. The T-72B was the slightly improved version of the T-72A. So, now, I'll admit, it's been a while since I've looked through the various T-72 variants. I'm pretty sure, but I could be wrong, that the T-72A was an earlier model than the T-72B. So, that being said, I'm honestly not sure how the T-72A is going to differ from the T-72B. But what I do know is that it's not exactly going to be... it's not going to be the peak of capability, is what I'm trying to get at. Okay, hang on just a second. Here we go. The T-72A, 1979 variant, an improved version of the basic T-72 Ural. Large numbers of early production Ural models were modernized in the 80s. Searchlight has been placed on the right side. Blanking off the... because these things used to have, like... We're talking about a vehicle old enough that it didn't even have a laser rangefinder. This, for the laser rangefinder, wasn't on the original T-72. To be fair, on the one you can see in game, you also see this thing. But this used to have a coincidence rangefinder, which is like the thing that you, I mean, rangefinders like that date all the way back to the start of the 1900s, where you actually had two mirrors in a long cylindrical tube, a certain distance feet apart from each other, and you had to adjust the mirrors until the target picture lined up, and that's how you got your range, by basically seeing how the deflection between the two mirrors. Usually one mirror was fixed and the other mirror could move. The distance between the two mirrors is a known quantity because you know how far the two mirrors are apart. And then using geometry, you can judge by how much you've had to adjust the movable mirror how far away the target is. Because you know two of the 3 points in the triangle, so you can extrapolate the third one. It's basically just a bunch of math, and it makes my head hurt. Blanking off the coincidence rangefinder and replacing it with a laser rangefinder, adding plastic armor track skirts covering the upper part of the suspension, which we appear to see in these pictures. Okay, so they did actually introduce some composite armor to the turret. So it's still not going to be great, and I honestly don't expect the protection to be much better than the T-72B in game. But it's not going to be quite as vulnerable to actually, that's a point. What is the kinetic protection? What is it? 8? Looks to be 800. I'm pretty sure that's 8. Yeah. Okay, so it's not quite going to be as vulnerable as the M60. Actually, that's a point. Doesn't the T80 have like 600? I think it's 600. Then again, the T80 is smothered in Contact 1. Which is kind of interesting, because the T-72B is also smothered in Contact 1. And heck, to even to be fair to the Marines, the M60 is smothered in in ERA. And that has 500. The CEV is not smothered in ERA, and that only has 300. So, small wrong button there. Anyway, what I was getting at is that The composite armor's probably going to be around the 450 to 500 millimeter mark if I had to make a guess, but it's not going to be great. And for reference, the T-72B, which is worth noting, is after, at least in this listing that I'm looking at, the T-72M and the it's after the T-72M. Actually, for that matter, what's the T-72AV? It's literally just a T-72A that has been smothered in Contact 1. Noted. T-72B is equipped with a new main gun with a new stabilization mechanism, a much better version of the fire control system. The T-72B can actually use a gun-launched ATGM. The T-72B is better armored, slightly, by like 20 millimeters. The front and the top of the turret were heavily reinforced by composite armor. And for reference, the one used on the T-72A was known by the U.S. codename Dolly Parton. The one used on the T-72B was known by the U.S. codename Super Dolly Parton. So, yeah. And presumably that's after the, that's before the smothering in ERA. New engine, only early models. Smoke dischargers are mounted on the turret. Okay, but anyway, the T-72 here. I'm thinking the one on the left is the AV variant, because that's the one that's smothered in ERA. The one on the right doesn't appear to actually have any ERA attached to it. So I wonder if we're looking at a tank that is going to be as cheap as the M60. Because the M60 is only 105 points, whereas the T-72 is 130 points. At cheapest. And the T-80BV is 155 points. Yet, I'm pretty sure the BV is suckier than the T-72B in almost every respect except for speed. Unless it somehow has a better gun. And I'm pretty sure it does not. It doesn't even get ATGMs. So why is it so expensive? I mean, it's faster, sure, but you could shave the cost down by like 15 points. That probably won't be too bad. Anyway, I digress. And then we have what is, for all intents and purposes, at least near as I can tell, basically a mini Smirch. So, yeah. Yeah, I honestly don't know what to say about this one. It really just appears to be a, it just appears to be a mini Smirch. It even has the same designation as Smirch. 9K58 refers to the Smirch. So... is there a variant? 9A... Oh, apparently there's an Arctic version of the Smirch. Mounted on the DT-30 chassis. That could be fun. Similar systems. Chinese knockoffs. Where is the Tornado? because I have a nagging suspicion this might be a tornado variant then. There it is. Okay, yeah, looking at 9A52-4. Okay, that looks about right. Variants. 9A15. 9A53S, 9A53G, and 9A52-4. Okay, well, a lot of the variants I'm seeing here are named things like 9A, and not 9K. So. Which is weird because from my understanding of the Soviet and later Russian arms designation system, A refers to like a toad system. Or not. Because that is 2A. SP. Booked. Okay, so anyway, I'm not entirely sure what or how the Russian designation system works, but I don't know where the devs are getting 9K515 from. But this, near as I can tell, this is basically just a mini Smirch, or more likely a mini. This is likely a mini Tornado S, is what I am trying and failing to express. Because I just searched up 9K515, and it brings up the Tornado S. So near as I can tell, it's basically just a mini Tornado S. Or, since you have 9K58, you basically have an option of just either a mini Smirch or a mini Tornado S. And then we have this. And I'm guessing this is like a basic troop transport. That's about it that I can think of. You just have a version with either a 50 cal and a AGS-30, or a version with a 23mm autocannon. Although, I distinctly remember seeing a particular mounting that basically, it was almost like a twin machine gun mount, but instead of having, because it appears here in this picture that the cord and the automatic grenade launcher are on like two separate pintle mounts, just side by side. The mounting that I saw, and I think I had the mounting I saw, they were on a singular mount, side by side. So I think that could be interesting. But right now, this just looks like what you see on the this thing, the BTRD where it's just 2 weapons on 2 separate pentholes. It's not really important. It's just me nitpicking. Anyway, looking ahead, beyond new content, one of the team's biggest long-term goals remains improving the game's core technology and overall stability. A large amount of the work is currently happening behind the scenes on engine improvements and technical overhauls that may not always be immediately visible, but are intended to strengthen Broken Arrow in the long run. We also want to thank everyone who continues sharing feedback on Discord, Reddit, Steam reviews, and during live streams. The team actively reads community discussions every day, and your feedback continues to shape the direction of future updates. We have more to we'll have more to share during the next Broken Arrow live stream around the game's anniversary in mid-June. Thank you again for your support, and we will see you on the battlefield. So it's going to be about 3 weeks until they do another one of these. 3 to 4. Overall, I'm excited for the DLC. Like, obviously, it's new content at the very least, and I'm excited for it. Technical patch. Well, it's not necessarily going to be for me, but not everything needs to be for me, so I know some people are going to be happy for it, and all power to them. Spectator mode, same deal, really. I mean, unless you want to make sort of cinematic replays, then again, replays, to my knowledge, aren't coming all that soon. Did I mention replays here at all? It does not seem to mention replays. I don't see replays. I mean, I could be entirely blind, but I don't see replays. Oh, nope, yep. Okay, yeah, there are replays. I'm just stupid. Anyway, so technical patch, spectator mode, not quite my cup of tea, but I know someone's gonna like it, so all power to them. Baltic Battalion, I'm interested to try it out. I'm gonna be doing that on the live server and not the PTE. The gameplay patch, not entirely. Well, I mean, I already said what I was. I already said what I said about that one, and I don't know. I know it's entirely my own opinion, and that in the grand scheme of things, my opinion does not matter. Like, my opinion about balance changes. My opinion of what is underpowered, overpowered, or what is going to be good and healthy for the game does not matter. What matters is what the devs see in the resources that they have and the changes that they decide to make based off of that information. That's what matters in the end. This is why it doesn't really make that much sense to me to whine about something being overpowered or underpowered, because your personal perceptions do not mean anything. Having said all of that, there are certainly some changes that could, not necessarily saying they will, but could come with the gameplay patch that I'm not entirely enthused about. There are some that I would definitely like to see, like the one with tanks. I mean, there's a moment in the Baltisk video where I take 4 Set V2s and I just roll them up a corridor, or not a corridor, I just roll them up a street, and they just wreck everything in front of them. And basically, and just, for all intents and purposes, pave the way to one of these capture, to one of the capture points. You're not really gonna do that with like, you can't really do that in live. I don't think it would have worked nearly as well. So, I like the tank changes. I'm okay with the artillery changes. I'm kind of okay with, but I think I'm going to leave my assessment of artillery to a different video. Either the one where I do the refinery mission, or the refinery scenario, or maybe a sort of, PTE thoughts video, which probably isn't going to be very long or contain much revelatory information. I mean, my thoughts of the PTE, I've been pretty open about them already, so. But anyway. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see what they what they decide to include. I will be making a video about that, like I did with all the other updates. So anyway, that's pretty much it for all of this.